to keep our politicians fighting? How do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome everyone to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you being here. We are live here on WYSL, so give us a call if you want to participate in the conversation. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Again, appreciate you being here. We're talking about, two things today. We're going to talk about what happened at Wegmans. And for those listening outside the Rochester area, I know there's some of you, Wegmans is very important here. People talk about Wegmans. It's a cult following. And I say that in a friendly way, mostly. And I also say this as someone who came from outside the area and see how big of a deal people make about Wegmans here. And then we're going to talk about, excuse me, we're going to talk about Steven Amenhauser. We're going to talk about that and in how we can prevent something like what happened to him from happening again, and look at the policy solutions here. We'll try to extract move beyond the tragedy of that and talk about what can we actually do about this. But first of all, let's talk about the Wegmans thing, right? So for those of you who either live outside the Rochester area or haven't heard, the local Black Lives Matter group, it looks like it's mostly people from Free the People Rock. They had held a march yesterday. They're calling it like a Daniel Prude, a day of I forget what he called it, like a day of resistance. They're trying to stop all commerce and whatnot, telling people to call out of work. And they had marched through a few different areas, a busy area called East and Alexander, and they had gone through different parts of the city, gave speeches, and at one point during this march, they went to a local grocery store. They went to a local Wegmans, and they sat outside of it, and they chanted, and it looked like they were trying to get in, but the managers and security ended up locking the doors. And if you were a person sitting inside that Wegmans, well, you're kind of stuck there then for a little bit. I know some people in the comment section when I posted about this on my Facebook page called them hostages. I mean, that's a little over the top maybe, but because they were able to get out, they just kind of went out the side door. People went outside door, walked up to the parking lot, and then left. So the owner was being held there, except for they couldn't go through the front door because they locked it to prevent these folks from going in. So this Wegmans was occupied. And this Wegmans is like a mile from my house. This is where I go shopping like half the time, right? And the store ended up being shut down for the rest of the day. So until they opened back up at 6 a.m. today, as I understood it. And they sat outside. They chalked all over the sidewalk saying, all Black Lives Matter, the justice for Daniel Prude. Some people were doing graffiti on the walls and whatnot, on the windows of the Wegmans. And so they did this whole thing. And, well, if their goal was to get attention, they certainly got it, right? And that's kind of what I figured was happening here at first, right? Is I figured that people were trying to get the attention of the news media because doing a march and again, this was the 1-year anniversary of Daniel Prude's death, who died at the hands of police. That's what, again, the medical examiner's report said it was a homicide, died at the hospital later. We've talked about Daniel Prude stuff. We talked about a little bit about the cover-up. I haven't read the full investigative report yet, which doesn't look good for anyone. There are no good people in this. Just lots of people who felt like they had reasons for not talking about this man's death and preventing what happened. And I got a comment online. I'm not woke. What's Wegmans? Andrew from Periscope. Come on, man. You don't know Wegmans? Wegmans is a Rochester grocery store. They're great. I enjoy shopping at them. They're a decent store. I like shopping at Wegmans. And again, it's a cult around here. For goodness sakes, they have in the local Museum of Play, they have like a mini Wegmans store to indoctrinate the local children here in Wegmans. And they've spread to Virginia and South Carolina or North Carolina and New York City. They're all over the place. People like Wegmans, right? I don't need to tell people in the Rochester area. It's a thing, right? People are very loyal and very passionate about this. So when a Wegmans comes under attacks, people are very upset, right? And and I get that, right? If you're out, you're doing your shopping, and suddenly your day is disrupted. You're not able to continue shopping. You're not able to just go about your day. Suddenly, like, there's these people outside there preventing you from leaving. What do you how do you feel about that? And I would love to hear if any of you were at that store, if any of you were there, give us a call, 585-346-3000. I'd love to hear from you. My wife narrowly missed going to the store, saved by my infant son waking up a little bit early and her feeding him. But she was going to go. She had procrastinated because of that. But she would have been over at that Wegmans if, my son hadn't woken up a little bit earlier from his nap than we expected. So they went to the store, and I assumed what it was they were trying to disrupt people's days, right? Like, there's a certain philosophy of protest that says, in order for protest to be effective, you need to shake people out of their normal life. Well, this certainly does that. And I've got a lot of feedback from other folks who said that this kind of makes people turned off, or whatever they're talking about. It doesn't matter how good the policy is. People are turned off by, in the minds of folks who are making the counter argument, violating the rights of the people in the store. You have interrupted their day. You have made it, put them in a situation that is stressful, anxiety-inducing, and you violated their rights. And again, if you feel this way, give us a call, 585-346-3000. Or if you're in the store especially, I would love to hear from that. I feel like that wasn't covered as much, but... So we have these folks sitting outside of Wegmans. They do their thing, and they've been out there, or they were out there for a little while. And I'm getting another comment from Jamie, says people need to stand up against them. Yeah, I mean, again, I kind of agree with some of the police reform things. I think that this incident is actually going to backfire on them. I think it's a strategy that's not going to work well. I think the moderate, progressives, liberal types who live in and around the city Wegmans, and I'm not talking about, this wasn't just an attention grabbing thing. I thought that's what it was. I thought it was because this would get attention. They were specifically targeting Wegmans, though, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. But I think this is going to backfire on folks. I think that most people will find this frustrating, will find this a step too far. And I know they don't give a crap about me, what you call tactic policing. It's what they would say if any lefties are listed as programmed. They would say I'm tactic policing, and that they need to shake people out of their complacency by doing radical actions like this. But I think the moderates in the city of Rochester, where I live, again, this is like a mile from my house, Brighton, Arundecoit, Penfield, some of the people who might shop in this area, I think they're going to be frustrated by this. They're going to just be like, well, this is a step too far. I agreed with you, but, you messed with my Wegmans now. And I got another comment from Andrew online. Oh, you're out in California. Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry, we have to explain the cult. You guys have, like, different cults there, and you have, like, In-N-Out Burger and whatnot. People get real passionate about that. But I think this is going to backfire on folks. I think this is going to make the moderates cringe a little bit. And we're seeing that happen in other places like Portland, where they've resorted to much more extreme tactics. We haven't seen that here because out there they felt like they need to continually escalate what those tactics were in order to keep getting attention. And so what they've gotten to at that point is people, going through neighborhoods at night, knocking on windows, knocking on doors, banging on things, saying, out of your homes into the streets. Do you think that's going to win folks over? No. I don't think so. And I think with this, too, police reform is already kind of on its way. There's a whole reform package that was proposed by my city council person, Mary Lupian, about all the different ways to reform police. The package is moving forward. And I know they felt like they needed to call attention to the death of Daniel Pruden and remind people of the injustice that happened. And I'm mostly sympathetic to the reforms of the actual police. Now, the other stuff that they stand for, the anti-capitalism stuff, obviously I don't like that. I think they're mistaken. Their anti-consumerism stance, their efforts to stop commerce, how does that help anyone? It doesn't. And when we come back, what we'll talk about is why they specifically targeted Wegmans and whether or not this is actually going to be helpful. I think it's nuts. I don't agree with this, but if you're on the other side of this too, if you are someone who supports this action that took place at Wegmans, give us a call, 585-346-3000. Or if you're in Wegmans, give us a call too, 585-346-3000. We'll be back with a free solution in just a few minutes.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
When you've been seriously injured in a car crash, you need a lawyer who knows how to beat the big insurance companies. Call me and I'll take them on so you can focus on your health and family.
Car crash, call Salino. Salino, call Salino. 888-2020.
Main Street, Rochester.
A message from the National Police Association. It used to be that any able-bodied person would offer to assist a police officer in danger. Now, passers-by are more likely to take a video. There's a better use for your phone when an officer's in trouble. Call 911. Tell the operator where you are and what you see. Then, start your video to provide evidence later. To learn more about how you can assist law enforcement, visit nationalpolice.org. That's nationalpolice.org.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Give us a call if you want to participate in the conversation, 585-346-3000. We did get a call over the break who wanted to remain anonymous, didn't want to go on air. That's all right. That is perfectly fine, too. And this caller just wanted to point out that a lot of BLM protests have disrupted other businesses, too. It's not just the big businesses like this. In fact, it's usually not. It's a lot of times the small businesses who end up hurt in these situations. So they wanted to point that out. And there's some truth to that for sure. In some of the protests, we've seen small businesses get attacked. I don't think it's the people fighting for policy. I think it's people who take advantage of the chaos of the situation and realize that, in a situation where police don't have a handle on things, when the situation starts to get out of control, that they can go and use that as an opportunity to steal. I don't think these are the folks fighting for police reform. I think these are just people taking advantage of it. But yeah, it has impacted a lot of small businesses. And we've also seen situations where small businesses have been the specific target of this. And in this case, yeah, Wegmans was a specific target of this, and I'll talk about why in a minute. And some of the folks who commented on my post yesterday on my Kevin Wilson Libertarian page, which is a great way to follow me. I'm posting stuff there outside of this show too, and having some great discussions. We had a good discussion on this yesterday, but people said Wegmans allowed this to happen, and I get that for Wegmans corporate or even for the East Ave location, they're put in a difficult position, right? So on one hand, you have these folks who are trespassing on their property, right? They're interrupting the shopper experience, and Wegmans is kind of notorious for not allowing many people on their property, even for things like selling Girl Scout cookies or whatever. They just don't do that, right? And if you go out and try to petition out in front, they will kick you out right away. They say it's private property, you don't have the right to be here, get out. So these folks, they're occupying the place, and so they have to decide, well, what do we do about this, right? What's the least damaging PR move? Do we let this happen and lose some business for the day and then hope people move on from the story? Or do they call the police? Because the police were there. They're right outside. They're staging at a parking lot nearby. And call the police and tell them to remove these folks so people can get back shopping, and then deal with the negative PR fallout of all that. I mean, the PR folks at Wegmans, they're in a tough position, right? They don't want to look like they're brutalizing protesters who are trying to call out Wegmans, and this is their words, Wegmans' complicity in racism in the Rochester area. And the Free the People Rocket have criticized, and other offshoot Black Lives Matter groups have criticized Wegmans because they also did things like they gave out like pizza and subs to the police officers during the protest earlier in the year as well. But this is something that runs a bit deeper. So Wegmans, trying to balance this PR situation, didn't want to exacerbate the situation, but what they're accusing Wegmans of doing is they're accusing Wegmans of not serving the city effectively, right? Now, by the way, just a small pet peeve on this, something that drives me nuts, because I see this, my friends on my Facebook feed talking about this, my pro-BLM left-wing friends who say, well, this Wegmans is even in the city, it doesn't count. Yeah, guys, it's in the city. It's in a good location. It makes sense. It's right at the nexus of like two major highways and a major road, and at the nexus of a bunch of towns. It makes sense. It's in the city. It's literally in the city limits. Come on. But Wegmans used to have many more city locations, right? They used to have a location over on Mount Hope. They used to have a location over on Driving Park. They used to have a location downtown. They had over at Midtown Plaza and at Culver Road. So they used to have all these small stores in the city proper. And over the years, they've kind of moved away from those, in part because they felt that they need to have a bigger footprint. They need to go with the larger store model in order for them to be successful. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know the specifics of these situations, but I know expanding in the city is a pain. Meeting parking requirements is a pain. Having the space to do all this stuff is difficult. So expanding in the city and also making sure that you're going to be able to have enough business to justify continue operating a city location, I imagine is difficult. I don't know the specifics of this. I'm just guessing based on talking to other business owners about the prospect of running operations in the city of Rochester proper. It ain't easy. But you figure any location for this, it's probably going to be near a nexus of a highway no matter what. And you have a lot of locations that are just outside of the city, that are close to bus lines and major highways. You got one over on Hudson Ave. You got one over on what's the other one on the west side? I forget. There's one over on the west side. It's right outside the city. You can get these places if you really want to. It's not all that far away. But the local activist groups are saying that they need to put these stores back in urban communities, and they need to continue serving the city because they had grown off of the city of Rochester. And there's one quote from an article I'll share in the comments for anyone listening online saying that they need to commit to bringing something nutritious into community that isn't supplied by FoodLink or some secondary food supply. mean, here's the thing. There's again, I live in the city of Rochester, and I've been all over the place. I know I live in the outskirts. The activists don't consider my area the city, the real city, apparently. But there are stores in the city. There's lots of places that are served other than FoodLink, and FoodLink is great. They're a wonderful organization, but there's also places like Tops. There's places like Price Right. There's places like Aldi. There's all sorts of stores throughout the city that are accessible on public transit lines. They're there. There's places to get it. Wegmans couldn't make it work. That's a business decision. The city of Rochester isn't owed additional Wegmans locations in their heart. Again, we have basically a couple rings around the city, and Wegmans has locations along those places. I would love to hear what they have to say about this. They're not really commenting much on like having locations within the city right now, and I don't know the full details of the whole battles of everything happened. I know people are upset still from like the Mount Hope location way back when not expanding like they hoped it would, or pulling out of other city locations. I get that. But there may be other economic forces that are larger than what is happening with it, and it can't be explained away as easy as Wegmans is being racist. Like, there are financial reasons for doing this, policy reasons for doing this. There are policy decisions around public transit access, mandated parking, land use regulations, zoning regulations that make it difficult for grocery stores to open in the city. I recognize that in some neighborhoods, it is difficult to walk to a place where you can get good groceries. The city of Rochester makes it harder by attacking convenience stores and small-time stores, and they're adding additional business regulations on them, making it difficult for people to sell fresh fruits and vegetables and have an actual grocery store in our city. People have made it work. Again, places like Price Right, Tops, Aldi, and other stores have made it work and have stores, locations deep within the city. Wegmans doesn't. They don't want to do that. Is it on them to jump through the extra hoops, to risk their profit, to have locations in the city proper? I would say no. So that's why Wegmans was targeted specifically. It's because of this, because Wegmans does not have a location within the actual city of Rochester. And I'll get to a couple of comments going on here. So Matt says, someone needs to reiterate that Danny's no longer the Wegmans CEO, stepped down in 2017. His sister Colleen took over. Yep, Colleen is the CEO of Wegmans. A bunch of people keep saying, like, they're risking Danny's money. Look, he's not actually the CEO. I mean, I'm sure he has some stake in this, of course, but Colleen is the CEO. That's correct. John says, the people in charge of Wegmans is super resilient and smart, so I'm sure they'll do something that will help relations, but for the protests to respect their property as well. Yeah, and I think, again, the other way in which this is, I think, a tactical mistake for protesters is because the corporate community in Rochester has been relatively friendly about Black Lives Matter stuff, alienating as much. They want to be anti-capitalism. They want to project the values of white supremacy on the corporate community in Rochester, sometimes fairly, but oftentimes unfairly. But alienating that other base of power is something that will jeopardize, in my mind, I think is going to jeopardize some of the key reforms that would actually improve the lives of people in the city of Rochester, particularly people of color, and their relationships with the police. If they're serious about this, building the coalition would be great. I would hate to see that policy fail just because they can't let go of their anti-corporate, anti-capitalism stance. Because I think, again, some of the policies, the police reforms proposed, make sense to me. The rest of their stuff is nonsense. Okay, so another comment from Matt says, people don't really understand how businesses work, do they? Wegmans will go where the money is. Additionally, the store designs have changed and isn't something you can shove into a small crowd area at the city. Look at Hart's as an example of how the grocery store failed in the city. Hart's was a downtown grocery store, and yeah, they had to close. They couldn't make it work. It's expensive operating, particularly in downtown. Wegmans has been able to make it work, it looks like, in New York City. It's possible to make it work, but there's got to be enough people around who are able to do it, access to public transportation, stuff at the right price points. It takes a lot to make it work. And again, I don't think Wegmans owes anyone a city location. All right, An additional city location. All right, so thanks so much for joining us here on A Free Solution. I'm going to switch topics after this. I'm going to talk about the Steven Amenhauser thing. And if you want to call in about either this or the next topic, give us a call, 585-346-3000. We'll be back with more from A Free Solution in a few minutes.
Don't be muzzled. AM 1040 Avon Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the latest forecast from the News 10 NBC Weather Center for today. A couple of showers around through midday, then clearing for the afternoon. It will still be mild, well up into the 60s, so might need the umbrella early, but it should be nice later today. Fair skies tonight in the 40s. Breezy and very warm Thursday, sun and clouds in the 70s. Rain and some strong gusty winds arriving Friday. I'm Rich Gadelia, WYSL.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
At Victor Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Anthony Drive off Route 96 in Victor. Spring lease savings are big, like the 21 Jeep Gladiator Sport 4x4 Crew Cab, $219 a month for 42 months. A 21 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo 4x4 is just $269 a month for 36 months. Requires existing Grand Cherokee lease and be returning lessee. The 2020 Jeep Renegade Latitude 4x4 is only $159 a month for 36 months. Must be Conquest or returning lessee. The 21 Ram 1500 Classic Warlock Quad Cab 4x4 pickup is just $159 a month for 36 months. Must be Conquest or returning lessee. Use 2 Ram coupons while supply lasts. Lease through Ally. Jeep, America's iconic 4-wheel drive brand. $2,500 cash or trade and other conditions apply. Get full details from the dealer. Equipment and MSRP vary by model. We're here to fully serve Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram customers in Victor, Canandaigua, Macedon, Fairport, and throughout the Metro and Finger Lakes. Shop with confidence and safety and full CDC compliance. Victor, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, 6560 Anthony Drive in Victor.
Sheriff Thomas Doherty would like to remind you that the tip hotline is available by phone or by internet. The hotline is an effort to elicit information from concerned citizens about illegal activity occurring in the county. Citizens are able to call with confidential information in a continued effort to fight crime in Livingston County. Anyone wanting to report information or provide tips are urged to call 585-243-7581 and leave as much precise information as possible, or use the form provided on the Sheriff's Office website, www.livingstoncounty.us. Select Departments and then select Sheriff's Office. If you are willing to identify yourself, the information will remain confidential and made only available to sheriff's investigators or local police agency when necessary. Again, all information will remain confidential. You can also follow us on Facebook at Livingston LCSO or Livingston County Sheriff's Office page. We are also on Twitter, LCSO at LCSONY911. These tools will be utilized to make our communities in Livingston County a safer place to live.
This is Jay Trainer, the voice of the Roberts Wesleyan College Redhawks. Today we shine the alumni spotlight on Izzy Groves, an all-ECC midfielder and captain for the women's soccer team from 2016 to 2019, while earning 4 straight United Soccer Coaches Team Academic Awards. While still planning a future career in the medical field, we congratulate Izzy on signing a contract with Lank FC, a professional team in Portugal. To read more about Izzy, visit robertsredhawks.com. Red Hawk Athletics, make it yours.
What does it mean to bank locally with Tompkins? It means keeping your money in your community with a team of neighbors to guide you through big decisions and milestones. Plus all the convenience of our mobile app where you can manage your account, deposit checks remotely, send money to family and friends, even turn your card off if it gets misplaced, then back on when you find it. Ready to bank locally with the team at Tompkins? Visit Tompkins Bank of Castile online or at a branch to get started. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Fratelli's Restaurant in Avon will be open Easter Sunday from 3 to 8 p.m. Fratelli's is open for dine-in and takeout Thursdays through Sunday. View the menu online, fratellisavon.com. Reserve now for Easter Sunday. Call 346-6160. Homemade meals like Grandma used to make. Fratelli's Restaurant, Route 15, just south of Exit 9 on I-390.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're live here on WYSL until 1 p.m., which means that you can call in and participate in the conversation if you're listening to this broadcast. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Of course, if you're listening online as well, you can either call in or comment. I love reading your comments and having you guys participate in the conversation that way. And shout out down the line to our friends listening over at WACK out in Newark and WENY, the Patriot down the southern tier. Appreciate you being here as well. And our podcast listeners, too. We have a growing podcast audience. Make sure you look up A Free Solution on any podcasting app. We should be there. If we're not, send us a message. Contact at afreesolution.com. We'll make sure that we get it up on your preferred podcasting platform. All sorts of ways to listen to this program. And make sure you can catch me 2 to 3 days a week, depending on what it is, and Larry Sharp on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And right now, Mondays through March, while I am still on paternity leave, taking a little bit more time off. All right, so we're talking about I want to make one last point about the Wegmans thing and move on to another topic, and that's the point made by if the folks behind these protests, the Free the People Rock protests, Black Lives Matter protests, if they really want more city locations, it seems odd to me that you would go and occupy the only city location and disrupt the customer experience there. And doesn't that disincentivize opening more city locations? I don't know that it incentivizes them to keep that Wegmans open, the one on East Ave, especially if this persists. And I don't know that it would persist, but if it did persist and they made it difficult to open and they shut down the store, would that be a victory? It certainly wouldn't be for me, who uses that Wegmans. It's a mile from my house. It's very convenient. I don't want to drive way the heck out to, Penfield to shop at Wegmans. I want to be able to, I literally ride my bike there sometimes because, well, it's a nice day and I can carry my groceries and it's fine. It would be a loss for me, the people in my neighborhood who are from all sorts of different incomes. It's not a wealthy neighborhood. It is a very diverse area. Draws from all sorts of different folks. It would be a loss for our neighborhood if that got shut down. So hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't think that's going to happen. But I can't imagine if there were persistent occupations of a parking lot or the store itself, that would bode well for Wegmans wanting to open more locations in the city. We'll see, though. Maybe I've been wrong about protest tactics being effective in the past, so who knows. Maybe Wegmans is figuring out the urban model in a way that will work more effectively, and they are thinking about opening up the city. But I'm betting it's not going to be the protest that does it. It's going to be, can they make a profit off of it? Because that's how these things work. And just remember that the profit margins, producer and I were talking between the breaks, profit margins for these places are super thin. And so wherever they move, it's got to be effective. Let's point out, Hearts couldn't make it. That stinks. The company I work for is actually thinking of getting an office above them, and then they shut down. That threw all of our plans into disarray. It's terrible, but it's hard to open a grocery store in the city. It's hard to keep it open. It's hard to make it profitable without making the price points crazy high. All right, so I'm going to move on from that topic. I want to talk about another news story that's, I think it's gotten a significant amount of coverage, but there's some accusations that it wasn't, which are kind of weird. So there's the case of Steven Amenhauser. So if you guys haven't heard about him, and it's interesting that it made me think of this story again this past week because a lot of people in response to the Wegmans incident said, well, why aren't people protesting over this guy, over Steven Amenhauser? And if you haven't heard about the story, there was a man who was burned to death in the city of Rochester. He was set on fire, allegedly, by a 16 year-old and a 14-year-old boy. They've now been charged. Boys, they've been charged with second-degree murder. It's just awful. Like just a terrible situation. This is a guy who's kind of living, not even paycheck to paycheck. He's barely scraping by, making a living. There's some sort of connection between these teen boys and this guy, Steven Amenhauser, and investigators are still trying to figure out what's happening. I tend not to comment on these things right away because I like to figure out what actually happened. And the reason why I'm commenting on this a little bit later is because I want to let some of the facts come out, figure out what went on, and see what happened. And folks are like, well, why isn't BLM protesting this? And I got to be honest, that kind of confused me for a bit. And actually, one other comment on this story too is there's this weird meta narrative that took place among certain right-wing populists in Rochester. They didn't get, and they said, no one's covering this story. No one cares about this story. And I didn't really get that because, honestly, every news station has covered this. This is a sensational crime. And for better or worse, news stations will run with headlines like this: man set on fire in the city of Rochester. This has made national news. When I started searching for stuff, as far away as San Francisco is reporting on this story, because it's sensational. It drives clicks. People want to say, why was a man set on fire? What happened here? This is awful. And people are hooked on the grotesqueness of this tragedy. So it seems bizarre to me that there are certain folks who are saying no one is reporting on the story. Of course they were. They were reporting on it immediately afterwards. Like Will Cleveland from the DNC was reporting on it like as soon as it happened, basically. So I don't get that criticism of it. There's a ton of coverage of this, and it's an awful situation. And so that leads us to the next part is, what happened here, and should BLM be protesting this? And the argument goes, this is an awful, violent incident that happened in the city, and if you are concerned about life, you are concerned about violence in the broader Rochester community, you should be bringing attention to this as well, because this is something that's awful, and we should want to prevent something like this from happening in the future. In the next segment, I'll talk about what can we do to prevent this, if anything. I don't know. Sometimes these sick crimes happen, but we'll talk about what led up to this and whether we could have done something about it. But I'm a little bit confused by the protest thing, because I think there's a difference between protesting when a heinous crime happens. Like, I don't know what you'd be protesting specifically in this. And if anyone can enlighten me, give me a call, 585-346-3000. I get the protesting the police thing. We have our tax money extracted from us to pay for the police. And you might agree with that, that's fine, but that is how it works. The money is taken from us, whether we like it or not, to pay for police, and they are supposed to be given a monopoly on the use of force, a monopoly on violence, in order to protect us. So when the police violate that right and they hurt people who shouldn't be hurt or who should have been protected, people facing a mental health crisis, or people just having a bad day or committing a minor crime, we is understandable to be outraged and want to protest when there's a public policy or failure of public safety that comes from the state. I think it is a different approach that we need to take when acts of violence come from individuals. And there's a policy element to this. And we'll talk about the catch and release stuff. We'll talk about whether or not the criminal justice system works for these kids. And I think clearly the criminal justice system, the mental health systems, a whole bunch of stuff failed these boys. And they're boys. It's awful. 16 and 14 committing a crime like this. It's sick. But I think it's different than protesting the police. I think you can be upset about this, and I think many people are upset about this. There are people in the city, and I see it as someone who is involved in a nonprofit in the city. I see people talking about the violence in the city all the time. Faith leaders, city council leaders, nonprofit leaders, other organizational leaders, they talk about violence constantly because it is an issue that plagues our city. and destroys the city and makes neighborhoods tough to live in and destroys the soul of people living there because they're subject to so much violence around them. It's awful. They talk about it so often that it often doesn't get news coverage when it happens. Oh, someone else is talking about violence today. Not worth running a headline over. But people are talking about it constantly. Are they effective in addressing it? Clearly not. We haven't found the right solution yet. But let's talk about what maybe could have been done with these boys and with violence in the city in general. We'll throw out a couple ideas. Not going to solve this problem in the next 15 minutes, but I want to talk about this, bring attention to this awful story because it's important to y'all. I've gotten that feedback. This is important. We need to talk about this. All right, so thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Hi, my name is Ryan Bourne.
And I'm Danica Bourne.
And we're the owners of South Coast Tax. We would like to thank our Lord for protecting us from evil. Psalm 91 states, "He is my refuge and my fortress, for he will rescue us from every trap and protect us from deadly disease."
South Coast Tax are Christian-based tax accountants and attorneys who specialize in releasing bank levies, wage garnishments, and filing complex tax returns. We are the leaders in acceptance of offers and compromise with awesome results.
We are also a small firm who will treat you like family and not just a number.
Call us today at 1-800-TAX-1176 for a free consultation, and we'll take the time to explain all of the programs that you qualify for in order to allow you a fresh start.
In John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. And one way we can achieve that is by being debt-free. So let us help you today. Call us at 1-800-TAX-1176, and together we can help achieve this goal by putting the IRS tax debt behind you for good. Again, that number is 1-800-TAX-1176.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at SimpleTech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, SimpleTech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
A free solution.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, we're talking about the Steven Amenhauser situation. That was the man who was burned to death in the city of Rochester. Just an awful crime. And I hear a lot of folks talking about this. They are shocked by the level of violence that's taken place in the city. You know, unfortunately, it's not like something this specifically horrible happens all the time. Violence does happen in the city a lot, though. There are quite a few people who have died already from homicide, who've been killed by in the city of Rochester this year. We saw an uptick in crime last year, which I think a lot of that can be attributed to Governor Cuomo shutting down the entire economy of our city and people being out of work, people being desperate, families getting desperate. And whenever you have desperation, you see increases in crime. You see increases in violence. You see people on edge. That's not what happened specifically in this situation, though. And I struggle to figure out what's the best thing to do here. And I'm not someone who's in a position, like many of you, I'm not someone who's in a position to make these decisions. I'm not a judge. I'm not in the criminal justice system. But I am someone who lives in the city. And, I look at these violent incidents and I want to think, how can we prevent this from happening again in the future? How can we make sure that something like this doesn't happen? And folks have pointed out to me that they think the issue might be that what they call catch and release, right? And what folks usually mean by that is how youth offenders like these two, this 14-year-old and the 16-year-old, are handled in the criminal justice system, right? So these guys, these two kids, and I say kids, again, literally, they are literally children. They had quite a long list of crimes. This is not like a one-off incident for these kids, right? So one of them had been charged with first-degree assault and attempted arson, that's with this crime, and then they've been charged with other violent felonies in the past. So one of them had been charged with armed robbery. He had been released because of his age. They'd been charged with one of them had been charged with using a knife among a group of people to rob a man who was walking to his car after buying a pizza. The man was deaf, didn't hear him coming, got robbed at knife point. Terrible thing. One of them was allegedly involved with that. They had been involved with, one of them had been involved with stealing a car, allegedly, back in January. They'd been involved with several other robberies. This is a pattern of violent and reckless behavior. And so the question is, well, what do you do with that? The catch and release accusations that go along with understanding their record is, well, how long do you detain them for being convicted of crimes like this? How long do you detain them when they are merely accused of crimes like this? When they are alleged to have committed a crime but haven't been convicted yet? Do you hold them indefinitely? Do you hold them on bail? Well, we've reformed the bail system, and bail, remember, was never meant to be used to hold people. It's meant to incentivize people to show up at the court again. Of course, in this case, the kids were not showing up to court either. They were given an appearance ticket, didn't show up. And in the juvenile system, again, the system tends not to hold kids who are accused of crimes. It tends to release them. That is generally the better way to do things, the reformers believe. And so in this case, they've been accused of crimes. They got let out. Now some people are saying, well, because we let them out, this crime happened. Steven Amenhauser would still be alive, wouldn't have been burned to death if these kids were held. And so my question to you, my question to policymakers too, who are thinking about these issues, is how long do you hold these kids? Clearly, these kids were failed by the criminal justice system. They had issues going on with their home life, and their parents, for what it's worth, were also charged with they were charged with endangering the welfare of a child. So one of their moms and the other one's father charged with endangering the welfare of a child and are facing charges for that related to the stolen car incident. But is that what we do here? Do we go after the parents? Clearly that didn't work in this case. Do we send them to mental health treatment? I mean, I know the records, because they're so young, are a little bit murky, but what kind of treatment were these kids getting? What kind of diversion programs were they participating in? How does our criminal justice system make sure that kids like this aren't falling through the cracks and continuing to be allowed to commit violent acts? When do we need greater interventions to prevent these crimes from escalating? And it's been suggested to me by conservatives and libertarians who lean conservative on criminal justice issues that we should just held them. Right? Again, we should just, if we'd held them in jail, in detention facility, this wouldn't have happened. But again, how long do we do that? What level of crime do we get to hold a 14-year-old indefinitely? Again, 14-year-olds have not fully developed their brain yet. They are not fully in control of this. And again, that's not an excuse for what happened, and most 14-year-olds do not commit violent crimes like this, but are they irredeemable? Were they irredeemable before this happened? In this case, when I question the need to protest, they've been captured. They are likely they are facing murder charges. They're likely to spend many, many years in jail. Could we have done something differently in the criminal justice system to prevent this from happening? Should they have been held longer? I don't know. I don't know that it makes sense to do that for every kid who steals a car. Is that, or every kid who gets in a fight and gets charged with battery? That's a violent felony, okay. But do we hold them indefinitely? What about armed robbery? How long do we hold a child in essentially jail for a crime? And do we hold them longer because we fear something like this could happen? This isn't going to happen with most people. This is a sickening crime. Usually this isn't how it plays out. A lot of times, when we're seeing these young people commit homicides, it's gang related. It's inner neighborhood conflict. That stuff happens, and it's awful. What preventative action can we take here? And I don't have the answers to this. I'm still thinking about how we approach it. And if you have any ideas in this, we don't have much time for you to give me a call, but send me a message, contact@afreesolution.com, or send the station a message, because I'm still thinking about how we want to do this. I want to think, what is the policy solution to prevent this from happening again? Because I don't think it's, we'll just hold them forever. Every teenager, every 14, 16-year-old who steals a car, who commits a crime, who does something stupid like rob someone with a knife, most of them are not going to go and murder someone, much less set a man on fire. I don't know what's wrong with these kids, and I wish something had happened differently. I don't know what that was. How do we prevent this from happening again in the future? I don't know. This one's tough. And my point to you in saying all this is that I think it's complicated. We can't just point at catch and release, and if we fix that, it's going to fix everything. How do we fix it? Because we need to come up with specific answers for what do we do with these kids who are lost, and how do we get to them before they commit awful crimes like this. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back. I'll be back on Friday, but Larry Sharp will be back tomorrow. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.